with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Good evening, lovely people, and welcome along once more to Neil Oliver Live on GB News TV and on radio. Coming up on tonight's show, I'll be speaking to Dr. Shankara Chetty, who has had great success treating COVID patients with readily available drugs. We'll talk about the rights and wrongs of AI, artificial intelligence technology, which could allow families to speak with virtual recreations of lost loved ones. Is cash making a comeback? We'll be discussing the news that cash withdrawals from banks and building societies appear to be on the rise. Plus, two amazing Great Britons and plenty of chat with my brilliant panellists, Jasmine Birtles and Jacob Reynolds. But first, an update on the latest news from Tatiana Sanchez.
Neil, thank you. This is the latest from the GB newsroom. Former Chancellor Nadhim Zahawi has sought to address questions over his tax affairs following reports he paid a penalty as part of a multi-million-pound tax settlement. In a statement, the Conservative Party chairman said the HMRC accepted he made a careless but not deliberate error in relation to the sale of shares in YouGov, the polling company he founded. Mr Zahawi has been under pressure following claims he tried to avoid paying tax, and Labour have said his position is untenable.
Dominic Raab, who's being investigated for bullying, is passing judgment on Nadhim Zahawi, who's just had a £1 million fine for not paying his taxes on time. That pretty much epitomises this Conservative cabinet. When the Prime Minister came into office, he said that he would run a government that would have honesty, integrity and professionalism at its heart. None of those three things are happening today.
The Prime Minister has been described as a total liability by Labour and faces a renewed wave of criticism from MPs after being fined for a second time by police. Rishi Sunak apologised for failing to wear a seatbelt whilst filming a social media clip earlier this week in the back of a moving car. The Prime Minister was also fined last year for breaking lockdown restrictions in 2020, and he's been accused of showing the same disregard for rules as former PM Boris Johnson. Shadow Financial Secretary James Murray says Mr Sunak has lost control.
Just when you thought the Conservatives couldn't get any more ridiculous, Rishi Sunak shows that he can't even fasten his own seatbelt. And I think this speaks volumes about the fact that the Prime Minister is not in control. And compare Keir Starmer with Rishi Sunak. You know, Keir Starmer has been at the World Economic Forum this week, promoting the UK, promoting our plan for economic growth, and Rishi Sunak can't fasten his own seatbelt. I think people will make their own judgment about who's best to lead the country.
But Deputy Prime Minister Dominic Raab has defended Mr Sunak, saying he's a human being who made a mistake.
The Prime Minister put his hand straight up. It was a mistake. He's apologised for it. He takes responsibility for it. He hasn't actually gone down that path of blaming anyone else. He's taken responsibility for it and he'll pay the fine. He's a human as well as a incredibly busy politician, the Prime Minister. He's got a frantic, hectic schedule, but he's made it clear there's no excuses.
The founder of bus firm Stagecoach, Dame Anne Gloag, has strongly disputed what she calls malicious allegations made against her after being charged with human trafficking offences. Police Scotland say 3 other people understood to be members of her family were charged on Thursday in connection with alleged immigration offences. Ms Gloag denies the allegations made against her and her family. An advisor to the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says indecision over whether to send German-made tanks to Ukraine is costing lives. Western allies agreed yesterday to send more NATO weaponry to Ukraine, but Germany remains reluctant to provide its Leopard tanks or allow other countries to donate theirs, despite increasing pressure to do so. Ukraine has urgently requested tanks to counter Russia's planned spring offensive. Police have been given more time to question a man who was arrested on suspicion of a terror offence at a hospital in Leeds. The 27-year-old man is being held and interviewed by police in West Yorkshire. He was allegedly seen with a suspected firearm and a suspicious package at St James's Hospital's maternity wing. Emergency services, including a bomb disposal unit, were called to St James's yesterday morning. The government is setting up a £5 million fund to help encourage young people to take up sport instead of turning to crime. More than 200 sports charities and organisations in England and Wales will benefit after bidding for the money last year. The Ministry of Justice says bidders were marked on their track record of helping kids at risk of antisocial behaviour to stay out of trouble. And the Met Office has issued a yellow weather warning for fog tomorrow, but says the worst of the cold spell is now coming to an end. The warning will be in place until 11 a.m. on Monday and cover the south and east of England and may cause disruption to flights, with drivers being warned of icy conditions. Temperatures across the country are expected to climb next week. TV, online and DAB+ radio, you're with GB News. Now it's back to Neil Oliver Live.
Thank you, as always, Tatiana. Nothing less than our way of life is under threat now. A population distracted by propaganda about one existential threat after another, pandemics, nuclear war, climate crisis, is being herded into an unrecognisable future. What was done in the name of COVID was grotesque, a violation of the rights of billions of people. Having seen what they can get away with, our so-called leaders have moved on, broadening their scope, as greedy for more as kids left unsupervised in a sweetie shop. What's happening now all around us is the relentless erosion, not just of our rights and liberties, but of our lives. It is so blatant what's happening, it's hard to see it for what it is, which is barefaced daylight robbery. After COVID, the C word that's supposed to be on everyone's lips, drummed into us night and day by the same complicit media that drives everything else, is climate. Climate crisis, in fact. 2 C words for the price of 1. From all sides, we are bombarded with predictions of the end of the world. Predictions, remember? Computer modelling, the crystal ball gazing of the scientific world. If you believe the predictions and the science, by which I mean the pronouncement of scientists and global corporations, the same corporations champing at the bit for all the government grants and contracts to get all tooled up for making expensive wind turbines, solar panels, liquid hydrogen processing plants, and all those batteries, gazillions of batteries filled with the Earth's rarest metals and minerals. The important word to notice there is rare, in that if they're rare now, what's it going to be like in 20 years' time when all the existing stuff needs replaced and multiplied in number by a factor of 10 or 100 or 1,000? If you believe that science unquestioningly, if you can't or won't see vested interests at work, it may already be too late for you. We're to sacrifice everything on the promise of jam tomorrow, pain for a decade, until the as yet non-existent technology is invented and fills all the yawning gaps. Try selling that business pitch on Dragon's Den. I don't know what I'm going to invent, but if you give me all your money, your way of life and your children's futures, this time next decade we'll all be farting through silk. They get away with it because of the message relentlessly pumped out. The message pumped out morning, noon and night that we filthy, mostly white creatures of the West have, with our greedy consumption of fossil fuels since the Industrial Revolution, all but set the world on fire. If we don't stop now, or preferably yesterday, they squeal, the blue planet will shortly be a blackened lump of charcoal, leaving only a smoking trail as it hurtles lifeless through the universe. By now, generations of people in the West have been raised to accept this grim premonition as holy writ. Children are crying themselves to sleep at night on account of their certainty that the planet won't continue to exist long enough for them to grow up. This ingrained endemic terror is the breeding ground for the insanity of net zero and the suicide note for millions that is Agenda 2030. Generations alive today have been raised to believe that the planet and entire populations yet to be are far, far more important than they are now. Those alive today are of no concern whatever when compared to the well-being of fantasy people of the future who will inhabit a utopia made possible by the impoverishment and immiseration of all of us here right now. Collectively, we are the first pancake, the throwaway. When I say we're being robbed of our way of life, I could as justifiably say our children are being raised to accept that their being alive at all is the biggest part of the problem. What the planet wants most of all, we're told, is to be rid of most of us, like too many flies in summer. All around the world, birth rates are dropping as fast as a piano falling out of a window. The living populations of many nations are not producing enough people to replace them after they die. If nothing is done to slow this runaway train, to drive the birth of many, many more babies every year, entire nations face inevitable extinction. Worse than our way of life being under threat, life itself is being sacrificed to ensure the future of planet Earth. The message fed to our children is satanically dark, that they are nothing more than a blight upon the world, meat-eating, resource-consuming, fossil fuel-dependent parasites. Once you contemplate the consequences of those poisonous seeds, the motivations behind anti-human notions like Agenda 2030 and Net Zero become obvious. Look around now. Take, for instance, the idea of the 15-minute city. That's another foot in the door by Mr. Global. Together with the clampdown on cars, the ideology that started with congestion zones but that has metastasised into a multifaceted determination to make the privacy and convenience of independent travel a thing of the past. The idea of limiting our horizons to within walking distance of our houses is about preparing us for smaller, meaner lives lived under perpetual scrutiny. Papers, please. Critics say it's all very well if you actually already live in a city, but ask, what about those in small towns, villages, or in isolated homes in the countryside? If you ask me, that's to miss the point of 15-minute cities entirely. If you ask me, the evolution in the minds of the powers that be, like those little emperors gathered in Davos, where the alpine air must be thick with the smell of spent aviation fuel from hundreds of private jets, and if reports are to believe the cologne worn by the thousands of sex workers who have arrived in town for no apparent reason whatsoever. The Daily Mail ran with the headline, "Prostitutes gather in Davos for annual meeting of global elite, where demand for sexual services rockets during economic summit." The grand plan of those priapic masters of the universe will see us herded out of the countryside, out of the villages and into those cities already built and others yet to be. The direction of travel I detect will set aside the countryside for other purposes that us little people ought not to bother our pretty little heads about. Probably growing all the biofuel required for all those private jets, who knows? In the future, we'll all be city mice and the country mice will be just another extinct species, like the cattle, pigs and sheep. The fear works best on children, and so much of the rest of the change to our way of life targets children first. Last week I read about Edinburgh being the first city in Europe to commit to getting meat off the menu in schools. Choice about what we eat is obviously another fundamental part of life that's being set aside without so much as a by your leave. But the utopian future is meatless, make no mistake, at least for the likes of us that can't afford to attend Davos in our private jets, or else made of some abomination grown in 3D printers in labs and sold to us as meat. And who's going to go meat-free first? The kids, of course. Those of us with kids know the truth of school meals, especially in primary schools. Jamie Oliver can bang on all he likes about revolutionising that aspect of the school day, but the reality of meat-free lunches in most primary schools will be chips, pizzas, more chips, and those hyper-processed chemistry set experiments they call vegan sausages, the ones with the ingredients list of unpronounceable additives on the back that's as long as the Old Testament, and more chips. Like rising damp that creeps or an airborne virus, new laws are being conjured into existence all around us, all of them shaped to profoundly alter our lives while we're conveniently distracted by a suspicious new pathogen and the threat of Armageddon caused either by nuclear war or the planet bursting into flames on account of too many burping cows and homes that are warm in the winter. As well as a way of life, old certainties dictated by nature herself are being erased. Always, always, it's about attacking the foundations of the family. Mothers are not necessarily women anymore. Women are certainly not a sex anymore, at least not as far as our elected representatives in Parliament are concerned. In a move so fast you might break your neck trying to keep up with it, women are designated as something men can choose to be when it suits them, less an adult human female, more a state of mind in a dress and a pair of court shoes. When I was a lad, the future was about world peace and teleporting to Mars for summer holidays. Instead, it's turned out to be about no more plane flights unless you're a billionaire, mass vaccinations, not for health, but to qualify for a digital ID, burgers made of bugs, bikes instead of cars, a forever war in Europe, and biological men urinating next to little girls in the ladies' toilets. The reams of new legislation are creeping up on us from all sides. They've demonised those on strike just in time to secure public support for new laws against striking. Oil billionaires funded the climate crisis, glue-downs and soup-throwing performances in art galleries just long enough to usher in new laws limiting the right to public protest. Sliding in as well is the Online Harms Bill, a full-throated attempt to take freedom of speech by the scruff of the neck and throw it down the waste chute as well. The World Health Organization, second biggest funder, the Bill Gates Foundation, don't forget, together with member states, is working towards a new pandemic treaty that might mean the next time, and Gates has put a hard pencil line around the year 2025 in which he predicts there will be a real doozy, it will be the WHO and not the elected governments of sovereign nations that call the shots when it comes to vaccine mandates, lockdowns, travel restrictions and all the rest. They're legislating about how we heat our homes, or rather how we don't heat them. Heat pumps that everyone with even a sketchy understanding of the laws of physics and the nature of the climate in the northern latitudes knows won't work. No more gas boilers. How long before they really do come for the wood burners, the coal fires and the gas stoves as well? How long before they decide they really will deny us every last one of the things that give us independence, herding us away from a past in which our heating and cooking is powered by fuels that can't be cut off remotely with just the flick of a switch on a smart meter? How long have we got? Health, freedom to move around our towns and around our world, the right to protest and dissent, the right to withhold our labour, freedom of speech, the nature of the food we eat, the right to refuse to accept a medical intervention, what it means to be women and men. The race is on. Our so-called leaders, all pumped up on the adrenaline of lockdowns and mandates, have sprinted out of the blocks for the ultimate round of supermarket sweep. Into their trolleys they plan to heap every last aspect of the lives we have had. They think they've got us scared enough to accept the whole damn lot of it. Here's the thing, I'm not afraid of them. I don't even take them seriously. All of that's my opinion, of course, and you're free to disagree. Keep your tweets and your emails coming throughout the show. You can email gbviews@gbnews.uk, and you can tweet me as well at gbnews, and I'll try to get to some of your comments later in the show. I'm joined tonight by the money expert and broadcaster Jasmine Birtles. Lovely to see you again. And Jacob Reynolds, the partnerships manager at the Academy of Ideas. Welcome back to you too,
Thanks,
Jacob. What do you think, Jasmine? I say they can't help themselves. They can't help helping themselves to our way of life. What's for you?
Well, I agree with what you've said, and particularly at the end, I don't take them seriously either. And what I'm seeing now is a breakup of the whole situation that you have outlined. And I was particularly, I mean, it made me snigger when I saw that headline, and I think it was Daily Mail Online, about the prostitutes. You know, now, in early, even last year, we wouldn't have had that headline. But this is, you know, the sniggering is starting. It's like prostitutes. And then we've had the video of Greta Thunberg's alleged arrest, you know, and her laughing with the police. We've got Rebel News doing marvellous videos, asking people, and really asking hard questions, the sort of questions that the mainstream media should have been asking. I mean, I agree with you that we're having this stuff coming at us from all sides. We've got the Online Harms Bill, as you say. We've got CBDCs potentially around, you know, central bank digital currencies. We've got the whole net zero nonsense. We've got transgender questioning all over the place. But we have a growing number of people who are going, there's something very wrong here. And this is people who were absolutely masked up to the eyeballs, vaxxed, doing everything that the government said. Now they're questioning.
Do you think so, Jacob? I would like to take that as really in line with how I'm thinking too. I think there's a ridiculousness about their ambitions creeping in.
Yeah, for sure. There's a slight emperor's no clothes quality to a lot of these pronouncements, and people do kind of asking more difficult questions, digging a little bit deeper. But it's still in a slightly difficult transitionary period, because what it takes is a tremendous amount of political courage for people to stand up and and kind of try and respond to these things. And similarly, that lack of political courage is reflected in our leaders, who maybe aren't quite as malevolent as you might have kind of pointed out in your opening, although I agree with most of the thrust of it, but more they themselves, I think, lack kind of political courage to offer some solutions to the crises that we kind of face. And as a result, they draw on any old things that happen to be in the ether, whether it's net zero or pronouncements from the World Economic Forum or whatever. And I think it's that lack of courage that kind of needs to be addressed.
I do think the more they're exposed, the more their ideas are widely disseminated, the more ridiculous and unwanted it begins to sound. Going to have to move on, though. We've got to get to a break already, after which Dr. Shankara Chetty will be here to tell us about the success he had treating COVID patients and how his findings have been ignored by the medical establishment around the world.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you.
Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons? I don't believe in prisons. I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Welcome back to Neil Oliver Live. How to treat COVID-19? That really should have been the question 3 years ago. Here in the West and around the world, doctors waited instead for a vaccine. Sufferers were sent home until they had breathing difficulties. Then they were put on ventilators in hospitals. People died in unknowable numbers. While all that unfolded in those early months, some doctors sought to treat their COVID patients. My first guest tonight is one of those. Dr. Shankara Chetty from South Africa has successfully treated thousands of his patients and also taught hundreds of other doctors to do likewise. Dr. Chetty joins me now. Good evening, Shankara. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening, Neil, and a pleasant evening to your viewers as well.
Thank you for that. Quite simply, tell us your story of treating COVID from the beginning.
Well, Neil, I made a decision in 2020 when I heard that COVID is circulating the globe, that there was a paucity of information surrounding the disease itself, and I wanted to examine every single patient and figure out exactly what was going on. I pitched a tent outside my home to take advantage of sunlight and ventilation, and I moved out of my home to isolate myself from my family. And I examined every COVID patient that walked into my practice. I triaged them, kept them separated so that people could be safe. Very early on, I noticed that I was dealing with something very unusual. I had suspicions that the illness wasn't properly classified and clarified clinically. Within the first 20 patients, I noticed that there were a subset of patients who desaturated very rapidly. My concern was with the breathlessness that was leading to hospitalizations and deaths, so I advised patients that if they experience those symptoms, I would like to know about it timeously. The first 5 patients that returned breathless did so in a very strange way. All of them that became breathless on the 8th day, exactly a week after the onset of their first symptoms or the feeling of being unwell. Now, those patients that returned, not all of them, there were a group that all patients have the initial phase of viral infection, and all patients show in a reasonable space of time good clinical improvement, which showed me we're having a robust immunologic response to this virus, natural response. But there were a subset of patients who on the 8th day became unwell again. And this becoming unwell was very discreet. These patients were perfectly fine on the 7th day. In fact, I've had patients play squash, engage in other sporting activities on the 7th day, thinking that they've completely recovered from the illness. And on the 8th day, very suddenly became tired, which progressed to breathlessness, which then progressed to oxygen dependency. And clearly I was dealing with 2 separate pathologies, a biphasic illness with no correlation between the phases and no progression between the phases because patients seem to have gotten better. Looking at that desaturation, there are only 2 things I think that would cause you to decompensate in that a rapid way. It is an allergic reaction, a severe allergic reaction to an allergen, or an exposure to a venom that would kill you in a day or 2 if you do not address it aggressively and timeously. So looking at these patients, I was aware that they're having some sort of hypersensitivity reaction on the 8th day to some kind of viral debris that was triggering this decompensation, which occurred directly in the lungs. It was clear that these patients could breathe easily, so there was no restriction to airflow, but there seemed to be a restriction to the elasticity of the lung. They couldn't take a deep breath. Their coughs were dry. So clearly these patients had edema of their lungs, but non-productive. So, and there was the absence of fever and the usual symptoms that you would associate with an infection. So I was of the opinion that these patients are actually having a hypersensitivity reaction to some kind of viral allergen. And so I used that as my basis for the second line of treatment in the second phase of the illness. We've all treated as medical practitioners. We've treated bee stings before. And the modality of treatment is simply steroids to turn off that inappropriate immunologic tap that's been turned on. And then, of course, to mop up all the mediators that get released during these kind of reactions. And so I used the antihistamines, dependent on which system was affected. I used either gut antihistamines or respiratory antihistamines. There's different kinds of histamines. We know about the clotting issues, so aspirin was imperative. We know about the leukotrienes, so I used montelukast to deal with that. And I got very quick, immediate almost, clinical recoveries. Now, it doesn't take long to reverse a bee sting. You cannot send that patient home till you are absolutely sure that you've turned that reaction around. So when I treat patients on the 8th day, I make sure I follow up the day before to ensure quick clinical response. If the response is not quick enough, then my intervention is not aggressive enough, and I need to readjust. And so over these past 3 years, during the first, second, and third wave, the 8th day was borne out to be true. We managed to catch those patients that decompensated and treated them aggressively and timeously. So we saw the same pattern, even though different systems were affected by this reaction. The respiratory in the first, the gastrointestinal in the second, and in the third wave seemed to target the circulation. And so we had all the clots and those kind of things happen. I published this in an academic journal here in South Africa called Modern Medicine, which is a peer-reviewed journal, in August 2020. But I've gotten silence. I've contacted every single publication in the world. None were willing to publish this, either because it's too controversial or that I'm not a subscriber. Seeing that they purport to be the custodians of science and new knowledge, I was pretty surprised that they wouldn't want to hear this that could negate the effects of this pandemic, even before we considered a vaccination.
But why on earth, when you had something that was working for, I believe you've treated something like 14,000 patients. Why, when you were having
14,000 patients, Neil, myself, and many other thousands around the world, and I've trained thousands of doctors around the world, and they've had the same outcomes. No hospitalizations, no deaths, no need for oxygen in my practice, and I've clearly negated the need for any vaccination to solve the problem.
So before there was any talk of vaccination, you had, to your own satisfaction, identified a course of treatment. You were successfully treating thousands of people. You were exporting that idea to those who were listening. What explanation is there for health authorities all around the world, especially in the West, refusing to discuss it, refusing to open that up to public debate and consideration?
Well, Neil, I'm pretty convinced there is an agenda out there. When you come up with the means to negate the mortality and morbidity in a global pandemic, and people choose willingly not to listen, then I'm sure there's some underlying agenda going on. I have a friend in the CDC who became aware of my work in 2020. The CDC contacted me to say they're interested in me presenting to them. But that presentation kept getting deferred till after the rollout of the vaccine. And I was contacted in January 2021 to ask if I would be willing to present, and that as well fell away. So I knew that there was an agenda to push the vaccines prior to any early treatment being acknowledged. My aim was to educate doctors and educate patients about the importance of that 8-day and recognizing a desaturation to get to treatment quickly, which saved all the lives. So it was ranged from patient education to doctor education to understanding the pathophysiology of the illness itself and what to treat. And a lot of the treatment is over the counter, on label. I think the label of viral pneumonia was wrong. So this is a hypersensitivity pneumonitis triggered by spike protein on the 8th day in susceptible individuals. And so everything I did was what doctors should have done from the start: treat the sick first. If we manage to solve all the mortality and morbidity, it completely negates the need for a spike-based vaccine rush to market. Natural immunity was clearly evident from people recovering.
And furthermore, am I right in getting from what you're saying that if it's the spike protein that that susceptible people are really struggling with, that an mRNA vaccine that only makes their bodies produce more spike protein would have been, well, counterproductive, to put it mildly?
Well, counterproductive and I think very poorly designed and ill-conceived. If we are allergic to spike protein, a subset of the population, and it triggers an immune response, an allergic kind of hypersensitivity response, then no manner of vaccine is going to address that issue. It's like someone gets stung with a bee, and we spending our time chasing the bee rather than treating the allergic reaction to the sting. So the virus is really inconsequential. Coronavirus is not the primary pathogen of COVID illness. It is spike protein that triggers a hypersensitivity reaction that results in all the mortality and morbidity. So it's a pathogenic protein that is the primary pathogen of COVID illness and not the virus. But we've spent our time chasing a virus. And of course, we've seen the lack of benefit in doing that globally. Of course, when we deal with an allergic reaction, attempting to expose the patient to that allergen can only bring tolerance. And that's what we're seeing recently with boosting of the vaccine, that we're getting IgG4, which is an immunoglobulin that gets your body to tolerate whatever you're being exposed to. And that's a dangerous thing if your body tolerates an infection with coronavirus. It's going to lead to more severe illness and more prolonged illness because you are not responding to it. And that's where we're at. This was discussed from the early 2021. I made my views on the vaccine very, very well known, that the vaccine will not do what we expect it to do. We are dealing with a severe immune dysregulation, and it should be treated as such.
Dr.
Long
Chetty,
COVID has stemmed from that as well.
Dr. Chetty, that's a fascinating account that you've given in such a succinct form that, you know, even I understand that effortlessly. Thank you so much. But time's against us, and I'm going to have to. All I can do now at this moment is just to say thank you so much, and I will very much look forward to picking this story up with you again in the future and hearing more about it. But for now, Dr. Shankara Chetty, thank you very much indeed. Jasmine, how do you react to that simple statement?
Well, as you say, it's simple, it's straightforward, it seems pretty obvious, even to a sort of a non-medical person like me. And I'm listening as a journalist, thinking, yet again, here we are hearing of, in this case, specialist publications going, oh, no, we can't hear you because we've got our advertisers, our sponsors, they're telling us not to hear you. I mean, this is, I think, what we've got across the board. We've got this with media, we've got this with government. Government have no idea what to say until they hear from it sounds to me, their corporate sponsors.
Jacob, what's your reaction to hearing that? A doctor, a working doctor, confronted with thousands of patients, he deduces what he does, tries to tell the world about it, and it falls into the void.
Well, I think that I'm no medical professional, so I can't comment on the specifics, obviously. But what we do know about the pandemic is that there was a mass state of panic around the provision of healthcare services. That at times, healthcare services focused rather on treating the illness. They were more concerned about stopping the spread of the virus, which may or may not have been the right decision. But we also know that there was a kind of unwillingness to learn from the evidence as the pandemic progressed, and that the kind of gatekeepers of scientific evidence proved very unresponsive to new information coming in. We found that out with regards to the origin of the virus and the huge scandal there's been around people trying to shut down that conversation. And similarly, similar things happened with regards to treatment protocols and spreading evidence. And what should be medicine being a science relies on debate and discussion.
I think it's just one of the most extraordinary bits of testimony I've heard in the last couple of years. You know, a doctor saying that he had understood what was going on, was able to prove it with successful treatment of thousands of people, and he couldn't get the wider Western world to listen to what he had learned because they were doggedly going to do nothing but wait for a vaccine.
It does seem, genuinely that there is no interest among a certain class of persons, no interest in actually helping people, keeping people alive, helping that. It is entirely, it seems, a sort of a dogmatic desire to be right, to be the first with some technology, to make a lot of money.
Astonishing, astonishing. I can't wait to hear more from Dr. Chetty at some point in the future, actually. Another break's upon us, after which artificial intelligence could give people the chance to speak with lost loved ones. Let's interrogate that properly. We will be discussing the positives and the negatives with one of our friendly futurologists. Back in a couple of minutes.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel. Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions. I have no time for cultural totalitarianism. We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
There you are. Where have you been? Back with Neil Oliver Live. Now, the loss of a loved one might be the hardest blow to be endured in life. For many, the grief is intensified by feelings of unfinished business, things left unsaid. For others, a lingering wish is that they could just talk again to their mum or their dad or whoever it is that has died. Now, artificial intelligence is offering the grieving the chance to do just that. rather than just look at photos, films and other mementos, Rememory can take your archive of physical memories and use it to generate an avatar of sorts of that lost loved one that can take part in real-time conversations. Joining me to discuss the concept, and it's a concept that I absolutely don't know how to internalise and accept, is futurologist Andrew Eborn. Andrew, thanks for coming.
Pleasure to see you
being
again,
with us.
Neil.
First of all, tell us how Rememory works. What is it?
Yeah, well, basically, this is a particular company. It's a soul-based company, quite appropriate for looking at the soul. And what it is, it's a Korean company which will take your memories whilst you're alive. They say take about sort of 7 hours of interviews with you, and they will record you, and they will record your mannerisms and your voice patterns. And they also encourage you to share particular memories. If you've got diaries and so on and so forth. And what that will then do, it gets fed into this machine, this artificial intelligence, which will then mimic you as an individual. And you're basically combining that, and they're missing a few tricks which we'll come on to, but you basically combine that then with the visual image. Where it was, we were discussing earlier, it's like Harry Potter, it's the images come to life. And then what this particular company is saying is that you can then pay to come and visit your past loved ones and engage in a conversation. Now, this is the headline stuff, which all sounds very creepy and scary. Is
it an image on a screen? Is it a 3D hologram?
They could do a lot better. So their particular product is you go along, and effectively it looks like a hologram, and you basically, it's probably, you spend about £10,000 to £20,000 creating this hologram and feeding it the intelligence. And then what this particular company is saying is that you spend £1,000 to £2,000 a time every time you come for a visit.
2,000 to 3,000 times to chat with Nan.
To chat with Nan. There is a much better solution. And the better solution, I've been, as you know, working with holograms for many years, and we do what we call digital resurrections. So working, for example, in the music world, if you've never seen Elvis perform, we can basically, from archive footage and so on and so forth, recreate Elvis and put him on stage with a live orchestra.
But there is a difference there, I would say, where people are going knowing that they're just going to watch a resurrected performance. But aren't we preying on people's grief by suggesting to them that they are now in the presence of their lost loved one? Is that not just exploiting?
That's certainly one way of looking at it. Well, I don't know if it is, because this is done during their lifetime. So it's rather, if you like, it's the stage on. It's not for everybody, I absolutely understand that. But it's the stage on from saying, look, let's go and watch a family movie. This is us, grands at Christmas time, enjoying whatever was left of the turkey. Here's that funny sort of memory about how they met and all that sort of stuff. So some people will find it very, very comforting. And if you look at the videos on this particular company's website, there are people who are very emotionally moved as a result of it.
Jacob, what do you think of that? Just in principle, inviting people to imagine that they're talking to someone who is, after all, not there.
Well, I mean, writers and philosophers often point out that we get the technologies socially that we're kind of craving, in a way. And what this represents, I think, is that people increasingly are struggling to give meaning to life, and so therefore are struggling to come to terms with people being dead. And so that naturally breeds a kind of need to cling on to the remnants of the past. I mean, we saw one of the revelations from Harry's biography was kind of one of the meta stories there was his inability to come to terms with the loss of his mother, and so he was paying mediums and psychics and all these kind of things. And in a way, what this technology represents is that writ large across society, our inability to come to terms with death because we struggle to give meaning to life.
But Jasmine, wouldn't you say that, I hear what Jacob's saying, but that's feeding that inability to accept reality rather than having someone find a measured way of accepting the loss.
Yeah, a way of moving on. And it does, I mean, as Jacob says, I think it is very much to do with not just a lack of meaning of life, but our lack of understanding of life as spirit. And because we have increasingly been told that there is only matter. You're born, you live, you die, end of. But those like myself, for example, who don't agree with that, I think that we should have a much better sense of life as spirit, as nothing to do with matter. That's a whole different thing.
Interesting, Andrew, isn't it? That this is circumventing what has been for thousands, an immeasurable period of time, people believing and accepting that lost loved ones are somewhere in another existence.
I think you're absolutely right, and I see that.
This is an ersatz decaffeinated coffee fakery?
Well, there is a degree of fakery about it, but the other way of looking at it is one up from the family album, the photographs, which you don't burn at the end of it. It's the memories, if you like, on film and so on and so forth. So if you can do, and this is just the beginning. As I say, it will now be possible, because technology is there, that you can combine it, and this will scare you, with robotics. So you could have,
Robot Nan.
Absolutely, you could have a Robo-Nan, which will look and feel and smell the same as your Nan. Will have the same memories, if you like, on that sort of basis.
Are we opening the door into a new reality where we as a species will be made redundant by the capabilities of artificial intelligence?
And that's always the scary thing.
And not just it'll do your job.
Yeah.
Or it'll harvest the crop. It will actually outthink you and actually be a better version of you.
And it's already happening. So in AI, and I've been talking about this for years, in 2016, an AI machine beat the world Go champion. On that sort of basis, so outthink them. It's what Alan Turing, the famous in the 1950s, he called the imitation game, when basically you can fool somebody into believing they're talking to a human being as opposed to a machine. We're already there. So the advances in that sort of side are tremendous. The trouble is the media always look at the negative side of it. And there are tremendous... And I watched another movie today called Megan, not to do with Harry or anything else, but it's to do with AI, robot and a toy. It's sort of one up from Chucky, if you like. But again, it's that negative side about the rise of the machine. HAL in 2001, you're looking at the Ex Machina. All of those are negative implications about how the machine will work. But the advances in AI, for example, in medicine and stuff like that, if you go to a doctor, if you can get an appointment, and that doctor on his or her desk has access to the best research in the world automatically and can help you diagnose to improve your treatment, that has got to be a good thing.
Yes.
But as with so much of technology, with AI, I think we have got to the point where the technology, the AI, is way past us, and we've allowed it to go forward without us thinking about the morality of this, having a look at how it genuinely fits in with humanity, rather than trying to fit humanity around the AI.
It's posing some of the biggest questions that our species will have been asked in 300,000 years. Sadly, we've got to go to the break now. Andrew, thank you very much for that. Wonderful stuff. I could talk about that for the rest of the 2 hours. But we've got another break to get through. Cash withdrawals are up for the first time in 13 years. Is the old folding stuff making a comeback? We'll find out in a couple of minutes. Bear with us.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here. You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akue,
Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
We've missed you. Welcome back to Neil Oliver Live. In the Money song, Monty Python sang about how there's nothing quite as wonderful as money. There is nothing quite as beautiful as cash. Some people say it's folly, but I'd rather have the lolly. With money, you can make a splash. In recent years, the old folding stuff, moolah, wedge, bees and honey, whatever you call it, has been going out of fashion, replaced first by plastic cards and then by apps on smartphones. But according to the latest research, the Nelson Eddies, the Lady Godivas, the Horn of Plenties and the Ponies and the Monkeys are on the way back. Nationwide has reported the first increase in cash withdrawals from ATMs for 13 years. Otto Benz, Nationwide's Director of Payments, joins me now. Good evening, Otto. Thank you for joining me.
Hi, thank you very much.
I am cheered by this news, but tell us, why is this happening?
Well, it's a good question. We think really that it's partially due to the end of COVID, and it's partially due to the fact that we are actually in a bit of a difficult time economically. And what we see is that people are taking more physical cash out so that they can use it to budget more easily. You know, when you actually take money out of the hole in the wall, you've got that money in front of you, and that's what you spend. And actually, that's what we see people doing.
Is there also, though, I appreciate that, but is there also an element at all, do you think, of a fight back against the cashless society and notions like, you know, digital currencies and cryptocurrencies?
I'm not sure I'm going to say it's a fight back, but I definitely agree that the end of cash has been, called far too often and far too quickly. Cash is very much not finished. People are still using it. And I think people want to use it. And I think people like using it, and I think it's not finished.
Jasmine, you're the money magpie. Yes. What's your take on the knowledge that people are taking out more cash and just carrying it with them, spending it as they wish?
Yes, I agree that there are two main reasons. One is because when times are tough, it's easier to budget with cash, actual folding money. You can see it going out of your wallet. You realise how to budget. But the other thing is there is a fight back. There is a fight back against the encroachment of digital. A lot of people are realising that if we go fully digital, that's our freedoms gone. If we go to central bank digital currencies, that really is our freedoms gone. Right now, every time you use a credit card, and I use them, credit, debit cards, certainly, there's a trace on everything that you do. But importantly, there's a charge. So you've got Visa, MasterCard who make money every time you have a transaction there. They have been waging a war against cash because they hate the fact that with cash, they don't make any money. And so it's a very much a corporate push with some governments as well, being very interested in the control element.
Jacob, you don't give a damn, do you?
Well, with due respect to the both of you, I can't stand this kind of technological determinism, Luddism, conspiratorialism around the end of cash. Of course, if governments want to put in kind of restrictive surveillance on what we do and buy, then that will be a challenge that we fight democratically. But that's not because of the technology. The technology is neutral. We decide what to make of it. And personally, I enjoy the convenience of paying on my phone and all the rest of it. And I know plenty of people who operate businesses. That's a huge, huge burden removed from the running of their business, having to count cash and do cash takes and all of these kind of things. And the transaction costs it's just easier and more convenient. And I think we should welcome and steer the technology in that direction rather than being conspiratorial.
Well, I think, convenience is always a problem. When you find something is very convenient, that is the danger. And what you have if we do go to a totally digital economy, then we have, as they've said in Davos, that we're going to have some major cyber attack, that's it. That's your money gone for, as long as the systems are out. We need to have something to fall back on. And increasingly, I think more and more people are realising that they need to have this safety net, frankly, of cash.
Jacob, Are you still... sorry, Otto, are you still with us? Otto, are people taking out large sums of money? I mean, is it even possible to tell that? Or is it just the odd 20 or the odd tenner here and there?
People are taking out reasonable sums. The average cash withdrawal is about £105. Wow. So it's actually quite substantial. It's not just small sums. But clearly, there's a whole range of behaviour there. Mm. But yeah, some people are taking small sums out and they're budgeting on small sums. But people on average taking more than £100 out, and that's the average for the year.
Would we expect a pushback then from, as Jasmine was saying, there's a very clear financial imperative for Visa and MasterCard and the rest because they get a payment for every transaction. Will they push back? Will it be even harder to get hold of actual money in the months and years ahead to try and further discourage that kind of antediluvian transaction?
I'm not sure I go that far. I think what I'd say is that the use of cash is actually really dominated by people who want to accept it. It's all about where you go to shop and whether they would prefer to take physical cash or cards. And actually, like you said, cash is not free. Processing cash is not free. Taking cards is not free. And actually, there is a competition there between cards and cash and what's the most convenient and what's less convenient. What I think we need to see in this society is to enable people to use the type of payment that they'd like to use, whether it's physical cash or cards. And we're definitely up to supporting both.
Jasmine Birtles here has a question for you or a point.
Well, yes, because I was thinking it's true. We do need to have both of them, because if you have just one, then that whatever one it is has all the power. And I do know that I think it was Visa. It was either Visa or MasterCard. I think it was Visa. A few years ago, were paying £10,000 or $10,000, depending where they are, to small businesses to go cashless. So there is most definitely an actual push to get rid of cash, to push small businesses particularly, and also large businesses, to not take cash. But I have quite a few friends who are now saying to businesses, well, if you don't take cash, I won't spend my money here. So we have seen a few businesses reverse their decision of going cashless because of that.
How do you react to that, Otto?
I think you're right. People use cash because they want to use it. You've mentioned some of the other reasons. They don't want to necessarily be controlled. But, it is all about convenience. It's about convenience for the people who want to use cash in shops. It's about the convenience of the businesses and merchants who take it. And I think we can probably live with both. And I think, cash is definitely not gone out of circulation. People still want to use it, and you can see that little growth back in the use of cash.
Otto Benz, Director of Payments at Nationwide, thank you for your time this evening. Fascinating.
Thank you very much.
Jacob, what about privacy? Does it not bother you that when you do something via, let's say, for example, a central bank digital currency, you're all for the future, that your every action, your every move, everything you buy, everywhere you go, every meal you share with friends will be attached to you?
Well, this question obviously comes up with everything related to the digital world, which is that there's a trail that can be potentially tracked and all the rest of it. That doesn't mean that we just kind of give up on the technologies and say the technology is inherently dangerous. It's that we come up with the right kind of laws and social attitudes to properly regulate them.
Going to have to get into a break here. That's the end of the first hour, but coming up next, we're lucky to be surrounded by fantastic female role models, and one of them will be joining me after the break to discuss last night's Inspiration Awards for Women. Don't go anywhere.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you.
Britain's watching. Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even some ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back once more to Neil Oliver Live on GB News TV and on radio. Coming up on the second hour of tonight's show, I'll be joined by the human rights activist Mary Ann Thompson-Frank to discuss last night's Inspiration Awards for Women. I'll also be joined by 3 brilliant female photographers to discuss their careers and show us some examples of their work. Our Great Britain has arranged a charity walk for her friend who is suffering from cancer, and both of them will be joining us tonight. Jeff Hummel will be joining us live from the coast of America to tell us about his hunt for a ship which sank back in 1875. Plus, plenty more chat with my fantastic panellists, Jasmine Birtles and Jacob Reynolds. But first, an update on the latest news from Tatiana Sanchez.
Neil, thank you very much. Good evening. This is the latest from the GB newsroom. Former Chancellor Nadeem Zahawi has sought to address questions over his tax affairs following reports he paid a penalty as part of a multi-million-pound tax settlement. In a statement, the Conservative Party chairman said the HMRC accepted he made a careless but not deliberate error in relation to the sale of shares in YouGov, that's the polling company he founded. Mr Zahawi has been under pressure following claims he tried to avoid paying tax, and Labour have said his position is untenable. The Prime Minister is facing a renewed wave of criticism from MPs, with Labour describing him as a total liability after he was fined by police for a second time. Rishi Sunak has apologised for not wearing a seatbelt whilst filming a social media clip in the back of a moving car earlier on this week. The Prime Minister was also fined last year for breaking lockdown restriction rules in 2020 and has been accused of showing the same disregard for rules as Boris Johnson. Shadow Financial Secretary James Murray says Mr Sunak has lost control.
Just when you thought the Conservatives couldn't get any more ridiculous, Rishi Sunak shows that he can't even fasten his own seatbelt. And I think this speaks volumes about the fact that the Prime Minister is not in control. And compare Keir Starmer with Rishi Sunak. You know, Keir Starmer has been at the World Economic Forum this week, promoting the UK, promoting our plan for economic growth. And Rishi Sunak can't fasten his own seatbelt. I think people will make their own judgment about who's best to lead the country.
But the Deputy Prime Minister, Dominic Raab, has defended Mr Sunak, saying he's a human being who made a mistake.
The Prime Minister put his hand straight up. It was a mistake. He's apologised for it. He takes responsibility for it. He hasn't actually gone down that path of blaming anyone else. He's taken responsibility for it and he'll pay the fine. He's a human as well as a incredibly busy politician, the Prime Minister. He's got a frantic, hectic schedule, but he's made it clear there's no excuses.
The founder of the bus firm Stagecoach, Dame Anne Gloag, has strongly disputed what she calls malicious allegations made against her after being charged with human trafficking offences. Police Scotland says 3 other people that are understood to be members of her family were charged on Thursday in connection with alleged immigration offences. Ms Gloag denies the allegations made against her and her family. The Met Office has issued a weather warning for fog tomorrow, but says the worst of the cold spell is now coming to an end. The yellow alert covering the south and east of England will be in place until 11 a.m. on Monday. Drivers are being warned of icy conditions with possible disruption to flights. Next week, however, temperatures right across the country are expected to climb yet again. TV, online and DAB Plus radio. This is GB News. Now it's back to Neil.
Thanks, Tatiana, and welcome back to Neil Oliver Live. Now, founded in 2008, the Inspiration Awards for Women acknowledge those women that are ideal role models for the next generation. The awards website says they're a fight back against the often negative portrayal of women in the press. This year's event was held last night in London, celebrating in Oscars-style splendour those women doing substantial things in society. Joining me now to discuss the importance of such awards is author, sculptor and activist, among many other things, genuine polymath, Marianne Thompson-Frank. Good evening, Marianne.
Evening, Neil.
Thank you for being with us. Why does a ceremony like this matter, an awards set up like this matter?
Well, I think to understand that we have to look at the history of it. It was established by Sky Andrew, who did it in honor of his late mother, Ziza. And here's the story of an amazing woman who spent all these years baking black pudding just so that she could raise a man that would become an Olympian and achieve amazing things. And there are women like that all over the world today that are doing things, amazing sacrifices, working so hard, and they change the world by what they do. But we don't see that. Instead, we look at how sexy is a woman, how, all these other values. And it's very limited to when a woman's ideal age range is. We don't look at what happens to a woman as she gets older. And sometimes the strongest voices come from that kind of experience. And that's something that is celebrated. And for example, with Dame Mary Berry, she was just the epitome of dignity, grace, strength. And we were just all in awe of her last night. It was midnight and she was up there on the stage full of verve and energy and love for this life. And I think that's something that everyone can resonate with.
How has it come to pass? It's the 21st century and women, more than 50% of the population, are not getting the recognition they deserve, you would say. How can that still be?
I think part of it is that both genders are having to relearn how we value each other, and I think that it's very important, and I speak to fellow feminists all the time, say we have to value the male, and we have to recognize that young men and older men right now are being tasked with redefining what an ideal masculinity is. And as women, we have to applaud what that is, and at the same time, recognize within ourselves all those things that sadly used to be seen as weak. It's powerful to be compassionate in this day and age, especially when everything is trying to encourage you to act in a sociopathic manner. To say, I feel and I care, that is a beautiful thing, a powerful thing that both genders can benefit from.
Do any awards acknowledge women who, let's say, they're not necessarily in careers outside the home, but, raising families,
yes.
Making those kinds of commitments
yes.
to family life, to their immediate communities?
Yeah, they recognize women that were CEOs, and they recognize women that were, there's a woman there that raised 4 children, and she was recognized as just being an exceptional mother. And the idea is, in a real world that values women in general, it's a woman's right to choose how she wants to be a woman. So we're going to value all of it equally because it's all about impact. Are you making a positive impact in the world?
Jasmine, do you think, when you look out at what we're presented with, do you think that younger generation girls and young women are presented with good role models of their own sex?
A few, yes. I think we've got both. We've got good role models and we've got very bad role models. I mean, I don't personally consider the Kardashians to be good role models, even though they've made insane amounts of money. I've never been a fan of Madonna. There have been quite a number of role models that I think have actually used the wrong sides of femininity, whereas the ones that you mentioned, compassion, for example, I agree, that is powerful. And I do think that right now, as you say, young men, particularly older men, are having to reevaluate their relationship with women and who they are. And of course, we also have, it seems to me, a big push to eliminate the existence of women, where we've had a few sort of women events, which are essentially celebrating men, men in a dress, basically, and that's how I would see it. So I think there is something that we as women need to stand up for right now. That we are women and we will not be annihilated.
Jacob, do you think the male sex is properly paying attention to the female sex? Do you think we are, making space for and recognising the kind of role models that we're talking about?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily put it in a kind of man versus woman sense, but I think certainly as a society, there is a lot of temptation at the moment to only value women in terms of vulnerability. And so there's a lot of kind of push for women to see themselves, and especially young women to see themselves as victims of social media or victims of catcalling, as victims of the male gaze or whatever it is. And I think that's kind of really detrimental to especially young women, because it tells them the only way to get ahead in life is to kind of make a victim out of yourself rather than do the kinds of achievements, whether it's in the workplace or in the home or in your community, that require you to kind of think of yourself as a robust, positive person who can make an impact in the world. So it's that vulnerability that I think is kind of detrimental for young women.
I mean, I definitely can't let this go by without, pointing out that our own Bev Turner here on GB News was given an award last night at this ceremony, which, apart from anything else, demonstrates that GB News absolutely is the people's channel, because it was a popular vote. It was the public vote that acknowledged Bev in that way. But having said that, Marianne, did the event get media attention? Did it attract coverage?
I think it did. Because, right now, people feel very strong. And, like, for example, is what you were just saying a moment ago, there are women that have been victims and have still become incredibly strong. And so to me, I think one of the strengths that we heard last night is whether it was a victimization from, maybe it was a sexual accosting, or it might have also just been, there were women that had actually been, migrants who had survived great struggles in order to become heads of their own corporations. So I think the idea is that you don't have to choose between. Life may have created you and put you in a situation where you're victimized, but you can choose your strength and your path, and that's what we're celebrating.
What did you make of, I think it was the Brits this year that dispensed with, the male artist, female artist, and just had artist, and yet all 5 nominees were men? Are we getting ourselves into an unnecessary mess when it comes to trying to be inclusive?
In my personal opinion, as someone that is competitive, I'm a sculptor, I'm a writer, my ego would like to know I'm the best, that it stands alone. Now, I can't speak for all women. There's some women that may feel that it's important to have their own category. But for me, if I'm in a competition for something that is regarding talent or ability or knowledge, I would like to be able to stand on my own for that.
But how could something like that come to pass? That there's space for 5 nominees for artist, and yet who makes these selections?
Well, I mean, we can put the Brits to one side, but the point being that I think there are some areas of life, like in art, music and those kind of things, where while men and women might sometimes bring slightly different qualities to the table, you can't make a definitive judgment and say, OK, men are always better in one category than another. This could have just been a blip. But it's also important to remember there are areas of life that are not like that, such as sport, where women 100% need their own categories, and women need to be able to compete against other women because there are fundamental differences between the sexes. So I think if we can be kind of grown up and recognise that in art and those kind of fields, then maybe we can have single categories, and if 5 men get nominated sometime, maybe it was just because there were 5 better men that year. But in the other categories, like in sport, we need to really keep the separation.
I don't think that's going to last, though, with the Brits. I mean, you were talking about egos. Frankly, if you take away ways in which people can be the best in something, then that's not going to last. People are not going to stand for that. I think artists are not going to stand for that.
Well, inevitably, in today's day and age, they'll just have 5 but mandate that 2 of them are men and 2 of them are women, and there'll be one kind of like special category.
A wild card.
Yeah.
What women were being recognised last night? Could you give us some ideas of the range of who was being acknowledged in various realms?
Well, in the room here, we had so many people that have there's a woman, and I wish I could remember her name, but she just touched me, because she can only remember 3 years of her life. So she calls herself a 3-year-old, but because that's all she can remember, the 3 last years of her adult life.
So her brain drops out the last...
She won an award because she, despite living in this mentality, she has made enormous strides in serving her community and helping her family and doing all of this. And so, I mean, one of the things they were looking at is who is a real survivor, who is still pulling themselves up with the bootstraps and doing remarkable things. You know, some days you and I might complain because some inconvenience, someone cut you off in traffic, and yet you see people out there that are just doing phenomenal things with their lives. And that they did an amazing job of recognizing that. And then you still had people like Emma Thompson that came out and celebrate that. And I think part of that is seeing when you have someone that society says, oh, pay attention to this person. And they're saying, pay attention to this person over here that's doing something remarkable. It's powerful.
How do the awards work? You know, how do people, are people nominated by whatever, by friends, by associates, by...
My understanding is Sky Andrew makes it public. People nominate each other. It is very open to the public. And then there are a couple that, there's a magazine called Global Woman led by its CEO, Morella Sula, and the magazine selects businesswomen awards as well.
Marianne, lovely to hear from you tonight.
Lovely to
Sounds like an excellent event, and more power to the elbow of whoever's organising that. Thank you for being here this evening. We're on to another break, after which, well, we've just been talking about inspirational women, and we have 3 more coming in to join us in the studio, and Dowling, Polina Plotnikova and Marie Late. All are hugely successful female photographers, and they'll be here to discuss their work.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison? I don't believe in prison. I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you know, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison? I don't believe in prison. I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Neil Oliver Live. Before going any further, I've got some feedback from earlier in the show. Wanda says, the point you made about our leaders' lack of courage is, I think, correct. It takes real bottle to speak out against the groupthink. However, I agree with Jasmine that once the cracks start to appear, there will be a tsunami and the whole rotten fraud will collapse. Well, here's hoping. And Michelle says, big question is these pathetic political classes are just yes men and women paid by the taxpayers and not doing what they're employed to do. And that includes civil servants. Why are they still in their jobs? Asks Michelle. And David says, thank you, Neil Oliver. Common sense prevails. He has my vote for Prime Minister. Oh, God, not that, please. Now, women have shaped and influenced the art and business of photography for the best part of 200 years. Figures like Anna Atkins, botanist and illustrator, and one of the first female photographers. French surrealist photographer Claude Cahun, Dutch fashion photographer Viviane Sasson, and iconic artists as diverse as Leni Riefenstahl and Annie Leibovitz. Women have been a force in the world of the image made of captured light. I have with me in the studio now 3 photographers who have also made their marks. Anne Dowling, Polina Plotnikova, and Mara Late. Am I pronouncing Late?
Exactly, yes.
Good. Welcome to the programme,
Thank
all
you
3
so
of
much.
you. Anne, start with you. You photograph nature. Tell me why. What are your inspirations? What catches your eye?
Neil, I absolutely love nature. I just think it's an opportunity to embrace, to engage with nature. I think it's very calming. It obviously has a restorative effect and it's been shown to be healing for patients. And I just love the fact that it's different every time you go out. It's different.
Now, nature's a very big subject. Nature's almost everything.
It is.
What particularly draws you? Is it animals? Is it plants? Is it landscape?
I love big landscapes. I lived in Australia for 10 years and I love the fact that they're expansive. You can see for miles and miles, and yet other times you just see the detail in a flower, in some frost. I just love the fact that you can engage, you can connect, and you can be part of this bigger world that we actually have.
Now, I think we should probably look at some photographs. I mean, what image do we have that we can queue up right away and consider? Is it something from Anne? I think might be the first.
I've got a number of different ones that I really love, Neil. This
here we
is
go.
a beautiful, beautiful confetti field, and it's planted as confetti, and you can photograph it, you can walk amongst it.
Right.
It's stunning, and the colours, you can see that it's in stripes of colour all the way through. It's as far as your eye can see, and you can go and have them and cut them and bring them back home with you and live with them.
Right.
I love this photograph. It's a panoramic that's one of my favourites.
Now, Paulina, you're a professional photographer, I think, and you're also a judge of photography. And I think I'm right in saying it's flowers for you. Why?
Well, again, flower photography, it's probably one of my sort of first absolutely favorite subjects in photography, but you might see some images later on. I do approach it slightly differently. And for example, my absolute passion, flowers at the last leg of their journey in life. So I think it's so easy to get carried away with, amazing blooms, but when flowers are past their prime, they still have absolutely amazing, things to share with us visually, I mean. So I would say that's my passion, but have a look at the
And do we have images of Paulina's work?
I think we do.
Oh, is this what you're describing here? Is
Yes,
this something that is
yes.
just turning from one thing into something else?
Yeah, and as I said, when all those, amazing, vibrant colors, petals, when it's all gone, we're left with the essence of the flower. All those skeletal lines, there is something very graphical, very visually interesting, completely different. So that's my passion. That's what I'm trying to capture.
And there's another one. There's something very, I think, opposite about photography and what you're describing, because flowers are brief and ephemeral.
Exactly.
And it's only through a medium, for example, like photography, that you can capture them before they're gone forever.
And we know the beauty is always in the eyes of the beholder. So what they're not beautiful conventionally, they're still absolutely stunning to my eyes.
And Mara, you're a landscape photographer. What is it that motivates you? What is it that you are waiting for that makes you, take the shot and drop the shutter?
I started because I love traveling. I love landscape. But what keeps motivating me is a lot of people don't have access to this amazing places like national parks that I go. And they actually thank me. Well, thank you so much for showing me. I'll probably never have the opportunity to see those places. And also, I think it brings a sense of more love towards our planet. So it raises issues related to conservation and taking care of our planet. This is what it keeps motivating me. I also that's at Yellowstone National Park. I love astrophotography a lot. I do photography, but I also do astrobiology. I like space exploration. And so sometimes I go to national parks at night, during nighttime, to photograph. Here is our galaxy, the core of our Milky Way during the summer months. This is London during sunrise. So because of my day job, I cannot go every weekend, every month to national parks. So here in London, we also have beautiful opportunities, and golden hour is the hour after sunrise or before sunset that really brings out.
Where were you that gave you that elevation?
So there's two hotels that are very close to Tower of London, and they have restaurant views, or sometimes I like to book hotels when I go visiting other cities that had a view of the city, and it's very close to Tower of London tube station just behind.
That effect you got there with the Tower of London and the earlier photograph of the galaxy. Mm-hmm. Are you applying technology to achieve that effect, or are you just looking and?
For the Tower of London photo, no, it's just the camera itself. But for the astrophotography, it's a great question, because yes, camera have limitations. In order for me, the settings that I use to capture the galaxy are different settings that I'm going to use to capture the foreground. I could have taken a single photo, but you could not probably see the hot spring very well. So I like to do different settings, and then I go, because digital photography, thankfully for that, you can blend and say, this is what the camera cannot show you, but what you can see.
And is there a personality that makes a photographer? Does it lean more towards a certain type of person, or is there a photographer in all of us?
I think there's a photographer in all of us. I think if you look, there's 54 billion photographs taken every year. There's 54,000 taken every second. So we're all photographers. The young girl who photographs her food because it's beautiful, or your cat or your dog, I think we're all photographers. This is one of my all-time favourites. It was an unexpected. You would think it was a washing line.
Yes.
We're all photographers in that we see things one way, but actually it's a shop. It's a shop in India, and it's a shop selling children's clothes.
Okay.
And I was so gifted in that at the precise moment I was standing on the opposite side of the road, a beautiful, elegant lady came. Mm-hmm. I could have had a very inexpensive smartphone, because it's about seeing. So for photographers and people, it's like, what do you actually see? So I think we can all be photographers.
I hear what you're saying, but I have always felt my wife it takes far better photographs than I do. You know, see, around the family, you know, I'll point my camera phone at the kids, and I'll get a shot. But when Trudy looks at it, she, I don't know, instinctively frames better. You know, she'll be looking at essentially all the same constituent elements, but the way what she puts in and what she leaves out, I look at it and go, why is your photograph better than my photograph? Because we were both standing in more or less the same place looking at the same thing. So there's something innate, I would say.
I'm not sure if it's innate. I think there's about what you see, and they often say it's what you see and what you don't see.
Some people may have a better photographic eye than others for composition. You want curves and lines. You don't want your subject right in front of you. You actually want the eye a little bit to unveil the main subject. And some people that have more eye for photography than others. But that can be taught. You can learn that as well.
That's to me that's Tolkien-esque to me. That there's something about the Shire and hobbits about that image. That's a real place. That
was taken here in England, Holnacar Tunnel, and this is the kind of feedback that I get. So, well, this is the real place, and maybe I cannot go there right now, but now you've inspired me to visit England, or or maybe I would never have the opportunity. But thank you for showing us the corners of the world.
And this won a competition, yes?
Yes, this won the UK Landscape Photographer of the Year. And I could not believe when I received the call. I received a phone call. I thought it was
stunning.
I thought it was more about submit high resolutions or raw files or still deciding. But no, it was you won. I was like, oh no, I couldn't believe it.
Deservedly so to me. Paulina, I'm very interested in your psychology and the way you're thinking when you talk about not just being interested in in its bloom that you're interested in, but all the stages of it. What do you?
Absolutely.
What's that thought process?
Think about it. For me, flower portraiture, that's how I actually define what I love in this particular subject. Flower portraiture is very close to portraiture photography, photographer taking amazing portraits of human beings. So surely you always look for some kind of unique features. You try to uncover some unique characteristics of your model. That's what I do with flowers. And again, going back to the same metaphor, surely portraiture photographer would be delighted to work with, let's say, young, beautiful professional model, but equally senior age model with all the wrinkles on their faces, with all the wisdom in their eyes, they would still be amazing subject for portraiture photographer. Flowers do exactly the same for me. I think they are absolutely fascinating at every single stage of their life.
Wonderful stuff. I think the range that all three of you brought individually to the subject of the photography that we've been talking about is just amazing. So, Anne Dowling, Paulina Plotnikova and Mara Leit, thank you so much for your time this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Now, after the break, we'll be speaking to this week's Great Britons. Alex Moore is a mother of two who has been living with secondary cancer and is calling on the NHS to do more for people with disabilities. And her friend Laura Bannister organised a sponsored walk to pay for Alex to get the physio treatment that she needed.
On Mark Dolan tonight from 8 till 11, we kick off with the People's Hour, in which I'll take your video calls on the big topics of the day. Plus tomorrow's papers with full panel reaction, Dolan's diary in which I look back at the week, and my Take at 10 monologue. A busy 3 hours. Join me from 8 for Mark Dolan Tonight, the home of big opinions. What's yours?
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio,
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Neil Oliver Live. Now, tomorrow on GB News, we'll bring you an exclusive interview with Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham. Gloria De Piero asked if he was planning to run as the leader of the Labour Party.
Well, I'm not planning to go back. I mean, I'm happy where I am. And let me say, maybe this is an exclusive for you. I will be running for a third term as Mayor of Greater Manchester. I love what I'm doing here. I think what we're building here is a big part of the answer to make British politics work better. And that is more power in the hands of a place like this. You know, this place is amazing, Greater Manchester. You know, the people here, the kind of passion that people have got, the identity. You give a place like this more power, it's unbelievable what it can do with it. And hopefully we're already showing that.
You can watch the full interview on GB News show Gloria Meets, where you'll get a better idea about the person behind the politician, every Sunday at 6 p.m. My next guest tonight is Alex Moore, a former teacher from South Woodham Ferris in Essex. She's a mother of two. In 2016, Alex found she had breast cancer. Initially treated and given the all clear, this time last year she was diagnosed with secondary cancer. Alex is joined down the line by Laura Bannister, who organised a walk to raise funds to enable Alex to receive much-needed physiotherapy as she recovered from her surgery. Good evening to you both. Thank you so much for making time. Alex, tell me your story.
Hi. Hiya. Yeah, I was diagnosed with secondary breast cancer this time last year.
Don't seem to have sound on.
I found that I couldn't walk.
Do we have sound for Alex? We don't.
Can you hear us?
Yeah. Oh, right. It's okay, Alex. Carry on.
Yeah, this time last year, I suddenly couldn't walk and ended up in hospital. And I spent 5 months bedridden. And when I came out, I couldn't walk at all. So I've been spending the last 5 months trying to learn to walk again. I had 6 sessions of physio on the NHS, which obviously wasn't anywhere near enough. So Laura kindly organised a half-marathon hike to raise money for me to have more physio, which cost nearly £100 a session. And she managed to get nearly 100 people on the half-marathon hike last weekend, which was amazing. And there's nearly £10,500 actually, £1,000 on the GoFundMe up to this point so far. So that's amazing, and I'm really grateful to Laura and her brother, Stephen as well from Construction Sport, and Laura from LKB Fitness. So thank you.
That is an extraordinary achievement. It's an extraordinary effort. But Alex, was it lockdown that stopped you receiving the care that you needed? Were you a subject of that particular problem that was all over the nation?
No, it wasn't anything to do with lockdown. It's the NHS resources. You are given 6 sessions. It wasn't even straight from hospital. It was delayed, so I had to wait. So the physio that I started having straight from hospital was private physio that we paid for ourselves. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to walk at all. Coming home from hospital, I couldn't even get upstairs. I had to have a bed downstairs to sleep. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to come home at all.
Laura, how did it feel watching Alex, who I know is a friend of yours of some long standing? How did it feel watching her you going through this?
Well,
Alex actually was a member of my online fitness membership, so that's how I got to know Alex more. And it was when she had to leave for obvious reasons, and then I checked in with her kind of after some time, and then she told me everything that she had been through, and I just couldn't believe it, how she'd gone from being such a supportive member on the membership and being so eager to stay fit and healthy to how she was. And like a year later, it was quite, it was unreal, and it was really upsetting to see.
And so how did you come up with the fundraising effort that you did? What was the inspiration there?
So I spoke to Alex at the end of last year. It was just before Christmas, and I said, she told me everything that was going on, and I said, and about the fact that she needs physio. And I said, leave it with me, I'll speak to my brother. And so I've got an online fitness membership, and my brother runs Construction Sport, which is his own charity, and he often runs big hikes. And I often join him, and I said to him, we need to pull something together for one of my previous members who's very poorly. He was like, yeah, when are we doing it? I said, January, let's do it when everyone's motivated so we can get a real good crowd together. And so I put a video out at the beginning of January, just of like showing Alex in all of her LKB stuff and getting all of her steps in, and to how she is now today and a bit of her journey, which was a touching video. And we, within the space of about 12 to 14 days, we pulled in over £10,000, but also had almost 100 people hike half a marathon across the Essex countryside in very muddy, wet, rainy conditions last Saturday. So it was great. And I thought so many people would pull out because of the conditions, but we were all there for Alex last week, and it was amazing.
Now, I mean, Alex, Laura, it's an inspirational story, you know, to hear about people who just get together and do what needs to be done, you know, for a fellow traveller. But it shouldn't be like this, should it? You know, in what way, what does the NHS have to do? How does it have to change such that it becomes better able to provide the kind of help that you need?
Well, to be honest, I was shocked that Alex only was allowed 6 sessions of physio after everything that she'd been through. Now, I think the NHS are amazing, and I think they do a fantastic job. But I think that something definitely needs to be looked at when someone in Alex's position, you know, has worked all her life, paid her taxes, whatever, is being given 6 sessions of physio to be able to walk again. So something definitely needs looking at.
Alex, does the physio help you? I mean, do you get a real, you know, positive effect from it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So all the sessions I have are an hour long with my private physio, and then also I go to Farley Hospice, and they have a gym that I can access, and they really help me as well. But obviously the NHS one was about 15 minutes long, so it wasn't very helpful at all.
It just seems extraordinary to me that something, as you say, that someone like you, that you only get this numbered set of physio sessions when you should be treated until the desired effect has been achieved, and that people all over the country are just in that same predicament, just being given this number of sessions, and then that's it. And if you're not better, or if you haven't reached your goal, you're left to your own devices.
Yeah, that's the way it is. And my oncologist also agreed that I would be someone that she would expect to have physio for the rest of my life. Wow.
Yeah. And Laura, tell me about the event on the day. You know, what was the atmosphere like as you were out? As you say, dreadful conditions. How were people facing up to it and
It was, yeah, I think even despite the conditions, we were there for a reason, and we was there to raise money for Alex. So the night before, I also had asked Alex, I said, can you just list some things that you've been through in the past year? And I'm just going to let the people know. We had a WhatsApp group of everybody, and I said, I'm going to let everyone know what you've been through, because I don't want people starting to think that they're going to pull out just because of a bit of mud and a bit of rain. And so I put that out to the team, and it was really touching. And everyone was like, we'll be there. So on the morning we started, it was pitch black. I mean, there was just a picture that come up there. It literally was pitch black. We had head torches watches, and we went up something called Radar Hill, which is a hill local to where we live. And so we was trekking up there, we were slipping over. We had a few people land on their bums. I mean, the mud was just unreal. The mud was sticking to our boots, whether it was trainers or hiking boots. We were carrying probably an extra stone on the bottom of our feet at times, especially on the hill there that it's showing. And it was windy, rainy, but you know what? When you've got a network of people around you and you're supported by people just going for a hike, you get through it. It was tough. People have been aching and got blisters since, but it's nothing compared to what Alex is going through.
Alex and Laura, this is a moment in the show, where we try and turn our attention on people who are, whatever extremists, whatever challenges they're going through, they still find they find the time and they find the ability to do something for others. And Alex, you're an inspiration for the way that you've just stoically faced up to the situation in which you find yourself. And Laura, for pitching in and organising that and gathering those people together. You very much qualify to be regarded as Great Britain's in my eyes. And also thank you again for making time for us this evening. Lots of love to you both.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's another break, after which we'll be hearing all about the amazing story of how two mariners found the wreck of the SS Pacific, which sank in 1875 off the coast of North America.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store? You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel. Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful. Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Welcome back to Neil Oliver Live. My next story is the stuff of nightmares and also of dreams. Nearly 150 years ago, the SS Pacific was sailing in the far North Pacific Ocean, loaded with dry goods, coal, horses, opium and 4,000 ounces of gold. In November 1875, she was lost in heavy seas, the worst maritime disaster in the North Pacific Ocean, costing the lives of 300 people on board. Now a team believes they have found the wreck and are going in search of the lost treasure. Millions of dollars worth of gold. Jeff Hummel, president of the Northwest Shipwreck Alliance and the man behind the search, joins me now from the RV Sea Blazer in Seattle. Good evening to you. Thank you for joining us. I think that our technology is working miracles tonight. Tell me about the search, how you found the SS Pacific.
Well, it's a rather long tale of how we discovered the ship. Part of it was through science and technology. Part of it was through archival research. And part of it was tracking down the story of some fishermen who had picked up some coal in their nets. And so we were able to analyze the coal and prove that it came from the ship. And we tracked down, very carefully the location of that coal by getting the logbook of the vessel that had found it and that sort of thing. And eventually those three things combined led to us finding the ship.
The ship from some coal in fishermen's nets. What process do you go through there?
Well, the fishermen dragged their nets on the bottom, and just by chance, this one particular commercial fisherman happened to save a piece of the coal that he had found. We had it chemically analyzed by a lab up in Alberta, and it matched the chemical signature of a coal mine owned by the owners of the ship.
That is extraordinary that that was even possible. What depth is the Pacific lying in?
Well, we never tell anyone the exact depth. It's kind of a trade secret, but it's between 300 and 700 meters. And how will you go about the business of actually getting to her and doing, conducting the search hands-on? What will you do? Well, we will be using underwater robotics equipment. I used to work for a company called Hydrovision, which is based in Scotland, and know a little bit about working with underwater robotics equipment. So we will use underwater robotics equipment this season. Next season, we're going to build a rather large gantry system to excavate the main part of the wreck. We feel like it's the only way to have the right tools to actually, dig into the ship. And how likely is it that after all of this time, 150 years, that you'll be able to identify and isolate the gold? Well, the gold was being shipped in a strong room. So the ship was California Gold Rush, and so it had a reinforced room that was on the main deck that was designed for the shipment of precious cargo. The ship took place, as you noted, in 1875, and so it's 25 years later, but the ship still had that strong room in it, and we believe that the cargo that was being shipped is in that strong room. And it's also, I think, we can't overlook the fact, can we, that 300 people, perhaps more, lost their lives. There's such a tragic aspect to this story woven through and around its being a treasure ship now. Yeah, so there is precious cargo on it, but the real treasures are going to be the other artifacts that we find. So we believe that we'll find, bottles of wine with the cork still in them. We'll find items made of leather, items made of cloth. The state of preservation of the wreck is really remarkable. And those will be displayed in a museum. So there's two parts of it. There's a commercial aspect of it. We're recovering the cargo for the underwriters who are actually based in London. And then there's the museum part of it, and all of the artifacts, cultural resources, personal belongings, all of those will end up in a museum here locally. A wonderful story, Jeff Hummel, of life and death and the prospect of gold at the end of it all. Thank you so much for bringing that to us this evening. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you for having me. Thank you. What do you think, Jacob? Treasure lost at sea, inspired by the thought?
No, I think it's fantastic, and I think it's especially encouraging what he noted about how the fact that it sounds like it's kind of been financial, that is financed by the gold, but the real kind of common treasure that we get in the public is an insight into what life was like at that moment and the artifacts and the stuff. And hopefully people a bit in the museum get a sense of what life would have been like on those kind of ships. And I think it's great that there's an opportunity for, the lucky underwriters in London they'll get their gold, but we, the public, as it were, kind of get the real treasure.
Yeah, I would love to know the stories. I didn't realise there were so many people who went down with it. So, that's a lot of people's stories to hear about.
Yeah, and it gives you, it's that other side of the California gold rush. You don't really think, you think about people just finding the gold and that's it.
Yeah.
That's it, their lives are made, the rich, but there's a whole after story about what happened, where the gold goes, and there must have been more than one instance like this.
Yes,
in that kind of territory.
It does make me think, because gold as an investment is a very interesting subject at the moment, and one of the things that keeps gold being really, really valuable is it's the lack of it. It's limited supply. But you do wonder, how many of these ships are there around the world? Great, gold bars. 4,000 ounces of gold. I mean, that is, I think the figure in question was $7 million at today's prices. Probably, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, no wonder there's these guys, roaming the planet, looking for these things. Because as you say, the world's oceans, the world's deserts must be littered. With these things.
It's also a real testament to human ingenuity in the way that they're able to piece together these kind of technical elements, the scientific elements, and then they're going to build various robots to get down there. It was a great story for Scotland and for Great Britain, as it were, that there's this world-leading kind of robotics lab there. That
Identified by a bit of coal.
Yes,
I know, astonishing. That's all from me and Neil Oliver Live. Thanks as always to my wonderful panel, Jasmine Birtles and Jacob Reynolds. Thanks for being with me. Next up, it's the brilliant Mark Dolan tonight.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office. I'm Jonathan Vautry. We've got a mixture of freezing fog and hill fog to deal with on Sunday, depending on whether you live in the northwest or the southeast. For the northwest, it is frontal systems that will be pushing their way in to provide a more unsettled period here, but high pressure stretching from Scandinavia down into southeast England will keep things on a calmer note here, but underneath the clearing skies we see a frost will develop quite widely once again tonight and return of some freezing fog patches. These could be quite dense in location, so do just take care if you are out when travelling. A more persistent band of rain then pushing into Northern Ireland and Scotland, so remaining a fairly damp night here, but also a mild one, temperatures holding up around 7 to 9 degrees. As we move throughout Sunday, that band of rain will shift its way eastwards and the cloud will gradually push into western areas of England and Wales. Once the freezing fog does eventually clear into the afternoon across the southeast, we will see some brighter skies develop here as well, but it is going to remain fairly cold, temperatures around 3 or 4 degrees in cities here. Much milder towards the northwest, where we've got the lowering cloud and the hill fog, highs of 9 or 10 degrees across the northern western Isles. Into Sunday evening, it is a relatively similar picture. The main difference will be, now that we've got the cloud across western areas of England and Wales, there is a reduced risk of frost here, whereas in the southeast, where we hold on to those clearing skies, temperatures will be falling away once again down to -6, -7 degrees in the most prone rural spots. So it will be a frosty start to the new working week in the southeast. But again, it will be a bright one, some sunny spells coming through during the day. Areas of rain and drizzle continuing in the northwest, perhaps the odd brighter spell compared to Monday itself, but it is going to be another cloudy day. Into the new working week, that cloud is gradually going to shift its way southwards along with the milder air, but it could just take a little while towards Wednesday. Good evening.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical.
It's 8 o'clock and this is Mark Dolan Tonight. 3 hours of big debate, big opinion and big entertainment along the way. We've got the Sunday papers with full panel reaction, my Take at 10 monologue and my look back at the week in Dolan's diary. But as always, we start with the People's Hour in which I take your video calls. Tonight, we'll be debating, does Rishi Sunak's seatbelt penalty matter? Should we pay for GP appointments? Should ITV sack Jeremy Clarkson? And as Buzz Aldrin, space hero, marries at 93, do age gaps in marriages work? So much to get through, including